Welcome to a realm where personal growth meets expansive spirituality and where we're not just scratching the surface. We're diving deep, widening our perspectives, and having a darn good time doing it. This is the Enlightened Podcast, and I am your host, Jen Hamilton. You'll enjoy an infusion of motivation, empowerment, and inspiration that will resonate in every aspect of your life. Expect captivating stories, heartfelt musings, and my own personal experiences. But that's not all. I'm bringing awe-inspiring individuals to the table, so get ready to meet some remarkable souls whose wisdom and stories will leave you spellbound. No topic is off limits here. Brace yourself for raw authenticity, unfiltered vulnerability, and yes, the occasional splash of explicit language. We're delving into the realms of the esoteric, mystical, and the woo-woo, unafraid to explore the extraordinary. So if you are ready to venture beyond the surface, to explore the depths of your soul, and to awaken the magic of life, if your heart says yes, then hit that play button and let the Enlightened Podcast guide you on this remarkable expedition. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Enlightened Podcast. I'm your host, Jen, and my very special guest today is Catherine Wood. Catherine is the founder of the Sanctuary of Ananda, situated in Western Australia, which focuses on Tantra and Eastern Philosophies. Her passions lay in teaching humanity the core principles of sacred love, which branches out into the field of Tantra, Kama Sutra, and Relationship Counselling. Established in 2004, the Sanctuary is a platinum-approved, internationally certified Tantra school with the International Institute of Complementary Therapists, which offers international Tantra training, workshops, private sessions, and couples retreats. Catherine is the author of The Way of the Heart, Tantra Empowerment for Women, and has been featured on Perth's Channel 9's show, Do You Want to Know What Women Want?, The Couch TV, and is a co-author in Extraordinary Businesswomen 2017. In 2018, Catherine won Soulful Communicator at the Perth Convention Centre, presented by Better Life Bookstores. And in 2019, she was featured in YMAG as Women of Influence, Australia's #1 empowerment magazine for women. In 2020, she became an Amazon best-selling co-author in the book Why Not, and has won numerous awards around the world, including 2022 and 2023 Lux Life Health, Beauty and Wellness Awards in the UK, Corporate Livewire Global Awards Relationships Counselor of the Year in 2022 and 23, and most recently, Australian Enterprise Award for the most prestigious Tantra School in 2024. Catherine holds a wealth of experience and knowledge in all areas of Tantra, which spans over 35 years, and has dedicated her life to help others discover the incredible benefits of Tantra. This episode is absolute fire. We dive into some really hot and sexy topics, and it's definitely not safe to be listening to at work or around kids. So just making sure you've got some headphones in or you're on your own. You also might want to slip it to your partner in case they can learn something from it as well. So without further ado, let's dive in. Hello, Catherine, and welcome to the Enlightened Podcast. Catherine from Sanctuary of Ananda. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks, Jen. Thanks for having me on here.
It's such a pleasure, and I'm so excited that we get to have this conversation. You and I are we are like balls deep in the middle of summer. You're in WA. I'm in Brisbane. We're in a heat wave. We are like dying of like heat stroke, but we're here and we're doing God's work.
Absolutely.
How hot did you say it was there in WA today?
Oh, I don't know about today, but the other day it was 40, got up to 43 where I am at the Sanctuary. Yeah.
That's insane. Now, you are a Tantra educator. We have got so many questions for you today, because not only am I excited to dive into this topic and really just sort of break down some, I guess, stigmas and answer a lot of questions that not only I've had throughout, my experience, very limited experience with Tantra, but also, we threw to Instagram the other day to ask for feedback and some questions that people had around this as well. And obviously, your perspective on everything as an educator. So let's dive in first. Like, tell us what Tantra even is.
Yeah. So Tantra, the word Tantra means to weave. So to weave means we're expanding our consciousness. So we're actually raising our state of mind into not only higher vibration, but also different and higher states of wisdom. So what they say in the Tantras, or the Tantras that I've studied, is that the animal kingdom, when we say the human kingdom, the animal kingdom, animals are not self-aware yet. They're not aware of self. So they're not individualized yet. They're, domesticated animals aware of the love of the master, and obviously wild animals instinct. But because they're not aware of self, they're not aware of their desire. So us humans, we are aware, we are individualized, we are self-aware, and we are aware of our emotions, we're aware of our desires. And in those desires, they can be healthy or unhealthy. So what Tantra does is kind of shines a spotlight on those, so that it's kind of like, okay, what do we need to do more of to move into higher consciousness, purity, state of mind? And that's the beginning of the practice. And there's just so many different avenues that go all around Tantra, from, communication, spirituality to sexuality.
And what is it that got you into this initially?
Oh gosh, it's a bit of a story, but
I've got time.
when I was 20 years old, I went to the local GP and had a pap smear, and he asked me if I knew about my cervix and all, the anatomy, and I was shocked and completely gobsmacked. And he said, well, that is the most sacred part of a woman's body, and it's a part of her body that she receives the world, and to start loving the world, she needs to start loving herself first. So that was the very first time that he started to explain what Tantra was. And then years later, I went to India with him and trained in one of the ashrams for 9 months.
Wow. It blows my mind that it came from like a male physician.
Yeah, I know.
Opened your mind up about this. This is incredible. And so where did you even start with this? Like when you went over to India, like what sort of the things that you start to learn about to begin with?
Obviously the philosophy, but you also learn that Tantra is not a religion, it's a way of life. There are many different types of philosophies, like Hindu and Buddhist Tantra and Tibetan Tantra. Geisha, the geishas learn some parts of Tantra as well. So there are, and also the Taoists, there's Tantra in there as well. So some of the practices I learnt really were about recognizing what was the lowest part of me and what was the highest part of me. So what was the best version of me and what was the worst version of me, as well as learning different meditations, and also learning how to cultivate sexual energy. So we move the sexual energy through the body, not only for obviously procreation and pleasure, but also for healing and vitality.
And then there's a lot of and I found this, when we went to Instagram, and I asked the question, what do you think Tantra is? And some people responded like, is it just sex related? Is it just kinky sex or eye gazing sex, or like just really connected sex? Where is it? I mean, obviously it's so much more than, anything to do with sexuality. Where did where did the sexuality side of Tantra really start to come into it, and how did it kind of like muddy the rest of what all of this experience of Tantra is?
Well, there are quite a few different versions, but one of the versions that I know of is that the original Tantra was called Vajrayana, and the Vajrayana Tantra is the Buddhist Tantra, and it's like an inner marriage of your divine masculine, divine feminine, your higher, your lower, your light, your dark. So there are statues and pictures in the Vajrayana of the Buddha, in a lotus or a form, in a statue form, but then there's a human woman sitting on his lap and wrapping her legs around him, and they're embraced.
Mm-hmm.
And so that symbol, because a lot of Tantra is symbolic, and so that symbol then looked sexual. It looks like they're actually connected sexually. So from there, it branched out into sexuality, and it became a practice or a discipline, a spiritual practice that, unlike most practices in the world, it actually included pleasure and sexuality. Yeah.
Wow. And so when you, as an educator, tell us about the work that you do to educate, or like, is it like, do you run classes? Do you run courses, programs? Tell us about those.
Yeah. So most of my work is one-on-one, and people come for all different reasons. And I also do couples sessions as well. I do couples retreats, which are 2-day weekend retreats, and I do 1-day couples sensual massage workshops. So they learn how to massage each other in Tantra. And I also do internationally certified Tantra training. So I teach those as well, which have been certified worldwide. And with the one-on-ones, someone might come and talk for an hour and a half about, say a lady, and she can't achieve G-spot orgasm, or she doesn't feel connected to her partner, or, there's lots of different reasons. That the theme, though, ultimately is around relationships, whether it's relationship with another or yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. And what is it like? I really want to dive into, I guess, the masculine and the feminine of this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with the feminine, actually. So when a woman comes to you and she's feeling really called to explore Tantra, on her own, perhaps, what is it that, like, what state is she in? Is she disconnected from self, disconnected from her body? What sort of state does she have to be in to be like, I need Cathy's support here?
It doesn't matter. Whatever she needs, I will be able to offer her, the specific tantric practices and the information as well, because I believe that in Tantra, the practices are not enough to actually really heal. Like, we also need to understand why things are happening, to what purpose does this serve. So there are a lot of books and a lot of people teach Tantra, but they can, even though the practices are all beautiful and divine and they serve a purpose, for some people they're not actually relevant, and for other people they may actually not be good for them. So I kind of work out, through doing this for such a long time, what is most possible for that person to be able to get the most out of Tantra, what is possible for them.
And what is it at the end of the day, like once they've come to work with you, from where they're at, where is it that you take them? I guess, what is I wouldn't say the end goal, because I mean, it's all evolutionary, right? We're all evolving. Where do they sort of somewhat end up to be like, okay, I get it now?
Yeah, look, I use an analogy when I do all my teachings, and I'll share it with everybody today, because for me it was a game changer. And it gives people hope, and it gives people, like I said, when we understand something, we're halfway healed. Yeah. So the analogy that I use is, imagine a mountain somewhere in the world. We don't even have to know where it is, or, look it up, or if visited it. It's symbolic and it's a metaphor. And then at the top of the mountain is our own individual couples, our own individual temple. So that could be, anything from a gazebo to a temple in Greece, whatever we, want to create with our state of mind. And some people just have beautiful gardens and a hammock. And down the bottom of the mountain is what I call the village in the mud. So the village in the mud is the place that we go to, when we're in our triggers and our wounds and our biases and our shadows. There's so many different terms that people use, especially in the New Age. And so when we can understand that some days we'll be in the village, and we learn tantric techniques to be able to get ourselves out of the village, And we might spend a whole month halfway up that mountain. But then when we go to do our tantric practices, because it is a state of mind, it's higher states of consciousness, we can then actually go to our own temple on the mountain. And we might be there for a week, but then a trigger comes along and we're back down in that village in the mud, and we are reacting to an emotional response for something that we actually are still working on in this lifetime.
Wow, I
If that
really,
makes
really like that
sense.
analogy. Yes, yes, it makes a lot of sense. I love that analogy. I love,
Mm.
the temple and, the village in the mud, because it gives us a really good understanding and a visual to how we get there. Can you
Mm.
tell us some of the I guess the principles of Tantra how many principles are there?
So one of the principles is know thyself.
Mhm.
So they say that if we don't really know ourselves and we're not working on ourselves, if we're not actually looking at what is in that village in the mud, we're just going to be playing out the same patterns or imprints or addictions or whatever we call it. So one of the main principles is know thyself. Yeah. And then from there, we move into sacred love. So sacred love for ourselves, sacred love for our partner. And they are the main two principles that we look at in the tantric practice.
Yeah, wow, beautiful. What are some of the practices that can be done to achieve these things, to tap in, to take us to the top of the mountain where the temple is?
Yeah, so meditation's my favorite. And I always, share with my clients and students, to what purpose does this serve?
Mm.
So we might need a meditation specifically for just rest and relaxation. Or if we want to really connect into our higher self, whatever people call that, divine, soul, spirit, um, then we would probably choose what we call a mental meditation and or mindfulness as well, to be able to see how we're actually playing out in our day-to-day life. Because a lot of people are very blinded in their own egocentric world. They don't actually see their part in, I call the play, but their part that they're actually contributing to in their relationship, their work, their day-to-day life. Like, you really need to become radically honest with yourself and look deeply at your own patterns and learn to regulate those moods, when we do react in that village in the mud.
What I love that. I love, oh God, it's so interesting because there's so many things that you're saying here that I resonate with, which is there's so much crossover in the work that I do as a coach as well to what you're saying, and I'm like, huh, because it's so funny. Like, Tantra's been on my radar for so long, and then obviously, like, you and I had connected a little while ago, and I'm listening to you, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this just like speaks to my soul. One, I guess it's like anything that you sort of, once you know the things, you can't unknow the things. What is there, like, levels that essentially people go through within their tantric practices? Like, tell us about that. Like, you obviously start and the know thyself, and then you can go broader with this. But tell us about the depths that you can take tantra to.
Yeah, so some people actually call the advanced Tantra sex magic, simply because you're in a state of complete divine bliss,
Hmm.
but you're also fully conscious of all that is. So some people use Tantra to awaken the Kundalini, the life force energy. I see it very much, like maths. So we start with our times table. And once we've mastered that, we go on to algebra, which I was never good at maths, by the way. And then, once we've mastered that, we go on to quantum physics. So we just start with, the basics of learning about, the village in the mud, the temple on the mountain. I really like my clients and students to really understand their personality dispositions, because that's a game changer. Like, if you know you're high in agreeableness, yeah, and you've got a partner that's high in disagreeableness, there's going to be conflict straight away. So it's a whole combination of knowing yourself, knowing your values, knowing your desires, like the desire for sex, to really sit and go, well, why do I have sex? Yeah. For some people, it's about just pleasure only. And there's nothing wrong with that. They're being radically honest. Yeah. Some
Mm-hmm.
people have sex to feel loved, especially
Mm-hmm.
women.
Mm-hmm.
It's like feminine's receptive, masculine's, projected. So they're actually having sex because they're being validated and loved, they believe, in that moment. So there are many different reasons. And then we sit and say to ourselves, well, where did that desire come from? Yeah. Is it regulated? Is it controlled? Because, if someone has a desire for Netflix and I say to them, is it regulated? They may go, no, I watch it all night till 3 a.m. and then I've got to get up at 6 a.m. for work. Well, you're actually not regulated in your desires. So um, ultimately, like I said before about the levels of maths in Tantra, we want to go to a place of purity. So we train our physical body, we train our emotional body, which is called our astral body, and we train our mental body, which is the concrete mind. And then from there, we use techniques and different breathing practices and meditation to be able to purify our energy center, to take sex from procreation, like the animals just have sex for procreation, um, through pleasure, but then up to a higher intent. And that intent is wisdom. So it's some people call it the divine marriage of masculine and feminine, when you're in that unity with all that is, that beautiful sacred love, that unconditional love. Because a lot of people know the emotional love, but they don't know unconditional love. And unconditional love is something that comes from our higher self. And I'm just going to call it soul, but everyone's got a different version
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what you think it is, but the more soul contact we have, the more not only wisdom we have, but we also have that expression for unconditional love.
It's incredible, isn't it? I understand the concept of it's almost like a sexual awakening, isn't it? When you understand it and you're so present with it and you're so connected with it, whether it's solo or whether it's, with a partner. Do you find that, like, what's happening in society that essentially we're so disconnected from our bodies and from our soul and from our desires? How did we get here? Like, I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it in so many people that I've connected with and with clients. We're just so disconnected. How did we get here?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. When, if we can think of that temple on the mountain, village in the mud, higher self as soul, village in the mud as personality. And the personality over eons of time, whether we believe in reincarnation or not, I mean, obviously something's going on because humanity's been around for a long time, long time. That personality nature becomes quite crystallized. So when it becomes crystallized, what happens is a person will become more centered on their ego selfish needs, and that also includes sexuality. And I don't, I think there's obviously a lot of universities in the world where, they teach you different skills to, move through to, a career, but there really aren't, to my knowledge, any universities that teach soul, that teach the higher consciousness, how to move from the lower to the higher. And I think that we're just in a very selfish, self-centered time where people are very fixated, not everybody, of course, but most people are very fixated on themselves. Yeah. When someone's fixated on self, they actually close the door to their higher self. So their higher self is what is actually their soul purpose. Yeah. And the higher self knows unconditional love, but the personality only knows emotional love. Yeah, love you today, hate you tomorrow.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I only started, I guess, really sort of deeply comprehending this. I'm sure it was like after I started working with plant medicine, like beautiful grandmother spirit, that really sort of woke me up. And, at the time I was in a partnership and I was able to explore those parts, but I felt embodied in it. I felt open. I felt connected to my soul, but I also felt that my partner wasn't there at the time. And in so many ways, like it was a beautiful, nourishing relationship. I've got nothing bad to say about the man or the relationship. We were just, not aligned in a lot of ways. And I hear it so often from women that women are doing the work in inverted commas. We're the ones that are exploring this. We're the ones, that are open to having the conversations or feeling connected to soul, whereas the beautiful logical mind of the masculine is perhaps kind of like, yeah, it's a crock of shit, or just not even open to receiving that. Tell us about what you're seeing. Are there more men coming through this space? Is there women coming? I really want to have my partner understand where I'm coming from with this. Like, what are you seeing in the dynamics of the masculine and the feminine?
Yeah, I see different dynamics in, say, couples retreats. And most of the time, the women have brought their men along, and the men have no idea what they're walking into. They think they have to get naked. And you can see their face, like they're just like, what am I walking into here? And I always do a little joke after we, formally started going, okay, we take our clothes off now.
I'd be like, okay.
But no, we don't. Not in the couples retreat. That's the couples massage workshops. But yeah, look, I think women, are really looking for connection, and men think they're looking for love and acceptance, but what they're really looking for is to feel like capable and appreciated and honored. And in the Tantras, we teach that a woman desires to be cherished and a man desires to be appreciated and honored. And of course, we can change those, in a couple's relationship to add more qualities. But I believe they're the sacred ingredients. When we can understand them, then we can actually create that beautiful unity. And like I said, women are more connected. Their positive sexual center, or what we call a yin center, is the heart, and the breasts are either side. So this is like the yang center in Tantra. So women penetrate the world with their breasts, but we call the vagina a yoni, which means sacred space, source, and it's like the entrance to the temple. But the yoni is yin. It's cool because biologically women don't need to orgasm to conceive. So ultimately in Tantra, even in same-sex couples, there'll be energy. It's energy, yeah? And the idea of that energy is that, she opens the heart with her center, and he opens the sexual center with his center, because a man's positive sexual center is, we call the penis a lingam.
A Liam.
Lingam.
Okay.
Lingam.
Oh, I did Liam as in like Liam, as in the guy. Not that I know any Liams, but I'm like, next time I'm going to meet a Liam, I'm like, hey.
No, Lingam.
Lingam. Okay, got it.
I always tell people to think of Star Wars with the lightsaber. So
I will
that's
not unsee that next time I see a penis.
yeah, that's the yang pole. That's the hot pole. That's the biological pole. And the heart center is the yin pole, the cool pole. Yeah, whereas women, this heart center is the warm pole. So we actually have gifts for each other. And again, Tantra doesn't discriminate. It is definitely for same-sex couples as well. We just change it slightly, yeah? So one of the main things I've found with the masculine is they don't know how to hold space for a woman when she is emotionally in her village in the mud. Yeah. They don't understand it. They don't understand the art of buffering, being able to speak truth and then remind her that they cherish her, that she's beautiful, she's amazing, incredible, they love her. A woman might say, hey babe, do I look fat in my bikini? And he might go, well, yeah, you've put on a little bit of weight. And she might react. And
And
he's
then
like,
he might
but I
die.
don't get it, because you've just asked me for an answer and I'm giving you the answer. And I'm like, yeah, but if you know buffering, you say, yeah, you're beautiful, you look amazing, you're my woman, I cherish you. So I find that, especially in couples retreats, when I take the guys on the Sunday, on the second day, and I sit with them for an hour and a half, the first thing I say to them is, how do you hold space for a woman? And we go around the room with 25, 30 guys, and basically nearly all of them are saying, run, just sit there and take it. Because, we could also think of the village in the mud as a stormy ocean. Feminine's like calm one moment, stormy the next. It's always moving. And masculine men haven't actually been taught that when she's in a storm, she's hurting. And rather than ignoring her or just say, get over it, or even, argue with her that she's not right, they don't realize that they're actually making the storm worse. When all she really wants is, I just want you to go into the storm, hold me, bring me back to shore, show me no matter what that you cherish me, that I'm number one. And, she may have said things to him in her village in the mud, her storm, that have triggered him. And he may go, why should I go in there and save her? Thing is, whoever is, whether it's masculine, feminine, man, woman, whoever is in that storm, if they're both in the storm, that's a whole new conversation. But if one is at the shore, they are meant to go in and hold space for their partner, because their partner's in a trigger. And we have to understand why that trigger happened. And I truly believe, after all the years of studying and teaching, and I'm still studying, I'm still a student of Tantra myself, that emotional sex, if we can get that right, if we can make the cake, we're going to have incredible, physical sex, which is the icing on the cake. We have to have both. And if a man or even his partner are not holding space for each other repeatedly over time, especially for a woman, the first thing that shuts down in her is her positive sexual center. And this is her passion. It moves down to the womb and it opens her sexually, because she feels safe enough to be held in any part of that ocean. But if a man's like, no, I just want you in the shallow end, I just like you when you're calm, that's again going to cause problems. And I also see men, and this is kind of played out unconsciously, but it's conscious at the same time. But at the same time, I have to mention to them, this is what you're doing. And they're like, oh yeah, I knew I was doing it, but I didn't realize the impact it was having. But when she's in the storm, treading water in that ocean with no boat, life raft, island, he either turns and pretends he can't see her, or he just watches her. And she's really screaming energetically, can you just be there for me? Because feminine's more emotional anyway. So when we're in our village in the mud, that's not who we are. These are all scars and imprints that have been printed on us by life's experience. And one of the major ones is trauma. And if couples and individuals can actually go back to sacred love and seeing the best in that temple on the mountain, they can grow those qualities into their life and their relationship. Because a village is always going to be there. It's how we get out of it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's true, isn't it? And gosh, there's so much to say here. Like in my own personal experience, in my previous relationship, I would be in the storm, I would be, in the mud, and I would be so activated in it. And I think that there was almost, and I've spoken to other coaches about this or other facilitators, that there's this almost this expectation that if you're in the field, whether it's psychology, coaching, psychotherapy, whatever it is, that you got your shit together and you know how to get your shit together quickly. And that might be all well and good for some instances, but sometimes we are just so deep in the mud, we can't just get our way out of it. Like we have to go through it. There, like you said, there's triggers, there's traumas, there's activations, there's all these things happening, and it's all part of the human experiences as well. I found when I was in it, it was almost like my partner didn't know how to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was the abandonment or the silent treatment,
Mm-hmm.
or taking it personally that he had done something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And then what all that was doing was reinforcing the abandonment pain that I was already deeply suffering in, because all it was doing was reinforcing the belief system that I'm not worthy of receiving love in this moment, which is how I'd probably already got into that state in the beginning, and then having it reinforced. And so I would often bring up in conversation, hey, when I get like this, it doesn't happen often. When I get like this, that's me screaming out to you that I need a hug, that I need love, I need support. And I might even scream a little bit, but I'm telling you now, that is what I need at the time. And to be able
Absolutely.
to open up that communication, like it definitely helped. It was definitely work to be able to go, if I was in the storm or if I was in the mud and he'd be like, do you need me? I'm like, I don't want you to ask me if I need you. I want you to just know that that is what I need. And then I realized like how I was communicating and not meeting him where he needed to be met based on his previous traumas and experiences. We were then able to talk about, okay, this is what this means. I'm a very, I'm quite self-aware person. So I know that, okay, when I'm activated, this is what's going on. And, I realized only recently, like sometimes, like, I'm not going to lie, Cathy, like sometimes I fantasize about like packing up shop, shutting everything down, running off, like getting a cabin in the woods and just like creating art where there's no phone reception and just living off berries kind of thing, right? Retirement. But I also know that when I get into that state is because I am feeling, dysregulated. I'm feeling discombobulated. I'm feeling unseen, unheard, unsafe, unsupported in some way, shape, or form, if not all of them. And all I need is a hug. All I need is for someone to go,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have to be a lover. It doesn't have to be a masculine man. Sometimes, like, I'll message a friend. Like, I've got, my best friend. We're constantly there for each other in that way, and she'll just, she'll see me, hold me, reflect back to me, which is beautiful. But there's a lot of people that I guess they don't have that self-awareness to go, I'm in this. This is what's going on for me. This is what I need. It's almost like they perpetuate their wrongness in it. I should be feeling this way because I'm hurting my partner. I'm hurting them because they're responding in this way. Therefore, I'm unsafe to have this feeling, which, if we take this back and, look at, our childhood and how we were, parented, how we handled being wrong about something, or how we dealt with our emotions, or how, we related with our parents and how we received love and nurturing. I think that has a lot to answer for everything essentially, in our adulthood. And also what I know to be true is that can change.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the exercises that I get couples to do is to share with each other what they believe they can see in their own village in the mud. And then once they've shared, the other partner can share back, thanks for sharing. I also see this pattern in you. Because, awareness is the first state of transformation. The more aware we can begin to become of our own triggers, then we can actually teach our partner, this is a scar and you're scratching it right now and you're actually making it worse. You're not making it better. And so conscious tantric relationships help each other to heal all these imprints that we regurgitate, we rinse and repeat throughout our life patterns in one way, shape, or form. And then, of course, on top of that, we've got the beautiful intimacy. You know, we heighten all the senses. We call the senses Indriyas. And so touch becomes, you know, absolutely ecstatic, and becomes like ecstasy. And, you know, it's a whole new world. But we can't really embrace and enjoy that fully without doing the work here, without making the cake.
Mm.
I did have a client once, a lady, a couple, and she said, well, can't I go to Coles and buy cake? And I said, no, you have to do the work. You can't have the icing. Yeah, I know.
It's the best bit.
I know. Yeah, well, she's got to make the icing, but, you know, a lot of people just stay in their own patterns just over and over, the same patterns, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
In different guises. You know, they might get a relationship and they end that relationship and they get a new relationship, and the person's a better quality person, but that scar is still getting scratched.
Yes. And I truly feel as though, and even in my own personal experience, like, you know, I've had multiple long-term relationships, and there's always been the gap in between to do the growth work. Because I feel it's so important to recalibrate, to get this, to know this new version of yourself that now exists after having, you know, related this person for whatever time period it was, to find yourself again, to connect with yourself again, to reignite that spark of love that you have with yourself. And I've noticed that, you know, for myself, even in the last, you know, 6 months, the depth of relationship I have with myself. I mean, I thought a year ago I was, oh yeah, I'm deeply in touch with myself. I know me, I love me, I get it. I was there. And, you know, since going through a separation last May, like going through this whole new recalibration, these whole new levels of it, and going, wow, like I like this. I like getting to know this new version of me. It's almost like I've got the space to do it too, because I'm not in relation with someone where I'm, you know, meeting someone else's needs and, you know, growing with someone else. I'm just here on my individual growth journey, which is, you know, this season and this iteration of my life right now, which I'm loving. You know, and it's also, I truly feel as though it's setting me up to be able to step into an even deeper level of conscious relationship moving forward, because I've gone through and I've healed a lot of the stuff that I had carried through from my previous relationship. And even to down to, you know, probably about a month or so ago, I realized I was still holding a lot of anger and resentment towards my ex-partner. Like, we had a very beautiful separation. We had a very, you know, conscious uncoupling. You know, it was a very, you know, supportive for each other. We, you know, there was no animosity or, you know, aggression or anything like that. But deep inside me, I was still holding a lot of anger and resentment. And it was really interesting, Cathy. A few weeks ago, I had a dream about him, and in the dream, I just projected everything that I had been holding on to. Like, we were in a room together, and I was like, fuck you, I'm so angry. Like, it's like I got it all out. I woke up and I'm like, oh, I hope you're okay. Sorry about it. And it's funny because I saw him last weekend and I mentioned this to him. I said, hey, look, you know, I had this dream. I feel like I've moved through a lot. And he was like, that's interesting. I went through a phase of not being able to sleep there for a little while. I'm like, oh, sorry. And look, we had done a closing ceremony of our relationship. We really focused on, you know, cutting off those ties, you know, ending our soul contract that we had. We knew that we had journeyed through lives together before. You know, we had sat medicine together, and we'd been able to sort of see that, you know, the journey that we're on together. And you know, when we separated, it was like, okay, we need to close off so that this doesn't keep chasing us into the next lifetime. So it was very beautiful. And it was also, there was a lot of trauma that I was holding on to that I didn't even know was there until, you know, months and months and months later. And it's now given me, you know, the tools to be able to go, okay, well, if I choose to let go of this what's underneath that? You know, who am I without holding on to this resentment? Because I don't want to, you know, go into another relationship and bring all this stuff with me, not trusting someone, not believing what they say, you know, feeling abandoned or traumatized from a previous. I just don't think that's fair to do to another person. However, I also see that this happens a lot in our society because it's almost like people can't stand being alone, or you know, think that they are missing a piece of them without being in a relationship. And I also believe that it's so at our fingertips right now, like the dating apps and this disposable mentality that people have, like dipping my toe in and out and in and out again of, you know, dating apps, and just getting like, I guess, like the creeps from it. Like I like myself, I get creeped out because I'm just like, I can't do this. Like because I can feel energy. I feel the density of the desperation essentially of what people are looking for in this way. And for me, I'm like, oh, I'm good on my, if that's what that is, I'm good doing my thing. I will meet someone organically. Like I'm not in any rush. I believe in divine timing. Like I'm good. But not everyone's there.
No, they're not. And everything is a work in progress for sure. So, you know, we've got lots to work on, but the most important thing is accepting ourselves and, you know, asking ourselves, you know, if we're in a relationship or if we're not in a relationship, if we want a relationship, you know, what is our primary core need in a relationship? Because someone might tick every box, but if they're not ticking your primary core need, there's going to be conflict in the relationship sooner or later. So, you know, the tantras are very misunderstood because, like, as we know, people think it's like, you know, group sex, orgies, amazing sex, orgasms that last all night and day, which I can teach people to have those types of orgasms. We call them cosmic orgasm, full body orgasm. But at the end of the day, there's still a lot of work, you know, that we become conscious and willing to work on ourselves, but we also accept where we are, you know, like, you know, we're all trying to do the best we can.
Yeah.
And, you know, at the end of the day, if I can just give people some tools and techniques and help guide them on the tantric path. And I guess my main passion is to show people what tantra is and what it's not.
Yeah.
You know? And it always amazes me, you know, the stigma around it and the reaction around tantra. I was flying back from Melbourne. I did some workshops in Melbourne about 10 years ago. And there was a lot of turbulence on this nighttime flight, and I was quite nervous back then flying. And one of the male stewards, he went and got me a cup of tea, and yeah, he talked to me for a while. Myself and my girlfriend were at the back of the plane. And yeah, later on I went down the back just to ask for another cup of tea, and the curtain was, you know, shut. And they said, come in, come in, come in. And I said, oh, I don't want to, you know, interrupt you. They're all having their dinner, all the hostesses and a couple of guys there and that. And he said, come and take a seat with us. I'll make you a cup of tea. How you feeling? Are you still nervous? And I'm like, oh, no, I know we're, you know, nearly home. And he said, you know, if you're nervous flying, what did you do in Melbourne? You know, why did you fly? And I went, oh, I did some Tantra workshops. And he goes, what's Tantra? And I said, oh, you know, Kama Sutra, sacred sexuality. And he's like, really? And then for the next hour and a half, I was giving them Tantra lessons. And every time a passenger rang the bell to get a drink, they would fight amongst each other who was going to go and serve them because they didn't want to leave the Tantra class at the back of the plane. And when we landed, he came up to us and told us that Lisa and I had to get off the plane last. And we were looking at each other going, what have we done wrong? What's going on? Why do we have to get off the plane? The whole plane was empty. And he said, oh, now you can come forward. The pilot and co-pilot want to meet you. And it's a true story. And, you know, I went into the cockpit and I sat in the pilot's seat. He had his, you know, pilot's hat on me, and Lisa's taking photos, and he's going, so tell me about Tantra. You know, I hear that you're a Tantra teacher. And we had a little chat. And of course, eventually we got off the plane, and Lisa and myself, our families were waiting for us, and they thought we'd missed the plane or something had gone wrong. And I went, "Oh, I'm sorry, the pilot wanted to know about Tantra." And my husband at the time said, "Of course," because this sort of thing goes on all the time for me.
Mhm. Mhm. That's a really cool story. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
And it's good that, people are curious about it, because yes, there are stigmas about it.
Mm,
Some of the responses that I got through on Instagram, when I threw to Instagram to ask, what is it that you think you know about Tantra and what is it that you want to know? And it was all about, kinky sex group, orgies and
mm.
that kind of stuff, which, I mean, is that anything to do with it? Is group, sexual exploration, is that actually part of it, or is that just part of a stigma?
Well, it is part of it, but it's the times tables.
Got you.
So,
Okay. So nowhere
you
near
know,
quantum science.
there's nothing wrong. People are at where they're at, but
Yeah.
we are supposed to grow. We are
Mhm.
supposed to evolve. So if, 5-10 years, people are still doing group sex, it means they're still doing their times table. And whilst they may enjoy that, they're actually missing out on so much more. And that's what Tantra offers. So
Mhm.
yeah, we all start somewhere. And if group sex is something that, people want to engage in, well, then that's where they're going to start. And that's totally relevant for where they're at.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
then as we start growing and learning, we shift from algebra to quantum physics. And then we actually become orgasmically hungry for knowledge, for wisdom,
Yes.
more
Yeah.
than just a body orgasm.
Yes.
I can
Yes.
sit in front of my tantric teacher slash esoteric master for 3 hours and just, I'm thirsty for the knowledge of the universe and how things tick and why we are what we are,
Yeah.
more than just having an orgasm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
everyone's at where they're at, and it's okay. And
Mhm.
that's why when I do teach, there's no judgment. Like I said, I could sit for an hour and a half and teach someone where their G spot is and how their partner can stimulate them or she can stimulate herself. I
Mhm.
can teach men techniques. I get a lot of men come through that have premature ejaculation, PE, erectile dysfunction, ED. That's very, very, very common, very common. And there's so many reasons for that. And I'm quite comfortable being where they're at
Yeah.
because that's where they're at.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, everybody's ready for different things. And so that's what I offer.
Beautiful. I'm really curious. Is there from a tantric perspective, is there anything that is for or against or null and void towards monogamy and polyamory?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jen. Again, if if someone's in that place of polyamory, it's something that they need to explore for whatever reason. And if they find, a great tantric teacher that can help them explore, to what purpose does this serve? Why are you doing this? Because I actually do know of men and women that engage in that, but the underlying reason is they're running away from who they are and they want to be validated. They don't want to settle down with one person because they don't want to get hurt. That's the ultimate core. So if they're free in their sexuality, um, then they feel safe in that space. Yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
ultimately, monogamy, there is a beautiful temple in India called Khajuraho, and there are explicit carvings, and I mean explicit carvings of group sex, sex with animals. Like it's
Oh,
right out there. It's incredible. Um, and it's called Khajuraho. And but if you keep walking to the top of the temple, you'll see a man and a woman in a statue. Because remember, I said Tantra is very symbolic.
Mhm.
And in Hindu Tantra, we call this Shiva Shakti.
Mhm.
So Shiva the god, Shakti the goddess, and they're embraced as one. And that's the ultimate journey. But a lot of people have to start at the base of the temple and they don't even look up and see Shiva Shakti. It doesn't even interest them because they're
Mhm.
still playing out what they need to hear. And it might be things from, it could be anything from, not when they're young, not being able to sow their wild oats, so to speak, not experiment with sex, not, they might have, got married young and it was always a missionary position, so maybe that relationship ends and then they start on this incredible, experience and journey of lots of sex and lots of different types of sex. Believe it or not, it's actually necessary for their spiritual growth. Yeah. It only becomes a problem when they stay there and they crystallize there. Yeah. Because we're meant to keep moving upwards. So yeah, there's so many different reasons why people choose, polyamory and monogamy. And again, it's exactly where people are at.
Yeah. What happens if, a couple's in, a long-term marriage, 15 to 20 years, for example, and then they want to start to explore poly? Because, obviously, things break down in relationships. We all know that nothing's perfect, especially after being with one person for such a long period of time. It's the same person. It's, the same sex, essentially, the same, but like, unless you're, necessarily growing together at the same rate, it's very, very normal for couples to grow apart. And then I know of a few people that have gone, well, let's explore polyamory after being in such a long-term relationship. Is that because they're not looking at something within themselves, or is it because that they know that they can experience sexual liberation on a different level that they haven't actually been able to explore within their monogamous relationship?
It's probably both. It really is about their desire nature, what they're actually desiring and why they're desiring it. So a lot of people don't want to get stuck with one person again after they've had a long-term marriage. They want to go out and explore and experiment and find themselves in that. But again, because one size doesn't fit all, in Tantra there's millions of shades of grey. It could be an avoidant, an avoidant of, well, I don't want to actually open my heart again because I just got my heart, smashed or closed down. So I'm safe. So they convince themselves they're in a safe space, but they're actually not really being truly authentic to who they actually are. And then you do have people that are like, I remember one guy that was a 50-year-old virgin, and he went from being a virgin to doing every sex scene imaginable. He went from one extreme to the other extreme. But eventually he came, back into the middle. So, I think it just depends on the people. Look, I'm not an expert per se, but I have been in this field for 20 plus years, and I am literally inundated with couples that stay together but start being polyamorous, or they want to introduce third person and things like that. It's only a very few couples I've seen that can actually really hold that space. And usually they're the couples that are really evolved, or more consciously awake, I should say, that have amazing communication skills and techniques with each other. And they're also working on the village and the mud and the scars that live in there, So most of the time I see it, because I see the couples come here, it ends in disaster. Because if, they go to a swing club, for example, one partner might always pick the same person and the other person starts to get jealous or concerned or curious, why are you always picking her, or why are you always picking him? And then the scars get activated, and what they went in for just to explore ends up becoming a great big entangled mess.
Yeah. I've seen it a lot. And like I had my, previous partner and I talk about open relating. And, when I went into the core of what that was, it was that I wasn't having my desires met. And I didn't, I could communicate it to a certain point, but I felt that he just didn't understand what that meant. And, as someone that's, very liberated, very embodied in their feminine, very connected. I've done a lot of work in this space. For a man to come in that hasn't done the work in it, I found that, not gonna lie, really fucking triggering at times. It was like,
Yeah.
catch up. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was this impatience of like, can't you just meet me here? And it was, and it's not even just about, a high sex drive. It's that desire for connection. And not only that, like, as the feminine, I don't want to be the one leading all the time either. Like, I want him to grab me and, make, beautiful eye contact with me and, put, you know, do these beautiful things that I'm so desiring, but I want him to know what to do. I don't want to have to school him or educate him or be the leader. I want to be led in that dynamic. And I think this is where, I can speak from that feminine perspective, that this is what women are going through. If we talk about, like we said before, like being in the mud, being in the storm, I was going through, there was a lot of abandonment pain. There was a lot of frustration. I was constantly being, compared to his ex. So I felt, there was this worthlessness that was underlying in there. Like there was a lot going on, plus I had stuff going on in my business. I had stuff going on in my family. Like there's always stuff. You know what I mean? However, it's very emotional for me. It was, as we are emotional creatures. And then on top of that, it's like, okay, well, I'm not being fulfilled in my relationship. Oh, if we have an open relationship, I can go back to someone that I know that used to fulfill that need that I was looking for. Okay, now I've got the green light and the golden ticket to do so. Let me make a phone call, kind of thing, right? And then it was like, okay, all right, this is not working for us, So from the female perspective, it's that desire to be led. We've got what I call the core fears: powerlessness, abandonment, and worthlessness, that all get activated and triggered. It's not being, safety is my number one highest thing. So I'm talking physical safety, sexual safety, emotional safety, and spiritual safety. As long as all of those are being met, my body will open, and my body is the most beautiful, like, intuitive vessel that I can tell, like, even how my muscles are. If I'm like up in my shoulders and I'm around someone, my body will respond. If I am engaging in, any sort of, I guess, sexual practices, or even just, coming into that space, relating with a man, I can tell straight away. Do you know what I mean? My body is literally going to respond itself as it does. And I'm so in tune with it that I know, okay, yes, this feels good. Let's go to the next step. Or it's a full body fuck no, and I'm out of there. So, I mean, that's kind of, that's my personal experience. And I know that that's a lot of females. I actually don't know a lot about what's going on for the masculine. However, I'd love to hear this from you, Cathy, because obviously you work with both men and women. So you've kind of got like the golden ticket here to know both sides of the coin here. What is it that the guys are going through, and what is it as women we can do to meet their needs and have them seen, supported, so that they can feel, valued and safe within the relationship dynamic?
That's another good question, Jen. I love your questions. Look, a lot of men, they have that, I guess, feeling around being masculine. What does masculine actually mean? And when we look at masculine in Tantra, we see it as positive energy, and the masculine supports, protects, and provides. Yeah, it's actually self-regulated, which means that it, in its true form, it doesn't want anything, it doesn't need anything, and it's goal-orientated as well. So I think one of the things that I see a lot of is that women don't sit and have open, authentic, safe communication. Yeah. We need to learn, okay, if we're both in the village in the mud, or one's in the village in the mud, we can't actually have an open, receptive conversation. So we go to our temple on the mountain, and men are really desiring to understand what women need. But if a woman doesn't understand what she needs, she's not going to be able to share with him this is what I need from you. Well, this is what I need from you to feel safe. And I don't mean physically safe. I'm talking about emotionally and intimately safe. This is what I actually need from you. They, for all the years I've been doing this, one of the things that fascinates me is that the men I've seen genuinely come to learn Tantra because they want to pleasure her. They want to be a better man. They want to learn how to open and connect with her and what she actually needs. But as women, being more feminine, not all women, but some women, we have that ability to emasculate a man, you know, basically cut his balls off. And he doesn't know how to navigate that deep ocean, the very thing that we're looking for if we're emasculating our partner or a man, then he's not going to come into the ocean to save us. He's just going to close up and he's not going to communicate. And then she's not going to feel him, especially if she's sensitive to energy, because this is her positive sexual pole. Then she triggers, then he triggers, and it just goes round and round in a circle. And women are absolutely screaming for connection, to be supported, protected, provided for. And most men can provide and protect, but to support her means to really understand what her scars are, what her triggers are that live in that village in the mud, and help her to heal them rather than grow them. Because once those scars grow, it's only a matter of time before they turn into dis-ease in the physical body. It's only a matter of time, whether we're, 30, 40, 50, 60, it eventually manifests in the physical form because, physical obviously is tangible matter. So, yeah, I do see a lot of guys that are just so lost. And of course, biologically speaking, women don't need to orgasm, and especially if she's going through menopause or she's not interested, or maybe he's not holding space for her when she's in her Kali in that storm in the ocean. So she shuts down sexually. So I see a lot of men that are shut down sexually. And Tantra teaches the two biggest cancers in the world are prostate cancer and breast cancer, which are both positive sexual centers in the Tantras. Yeah.
It makes so much sense, doesn't it? That we, that what we're seeing as, because I am a huge fan of metaphysical anatomy. Like, I absolutely froth over it because we can understand so much about ourselves through how things show up in our body. It's absolutely fascinating. I just want to circle back to one thing, Cathy, around, because obviously, like, safety is such a big thing for a woman, to be safe in every area. Do men need not necessarily the level of safety, but do they feel as though they can, if they're, seen, valued and supported and acknowledged, is that their version of safety, or is there another version of safety that they need to be provided with?
Capable, appreciating and honoring. So if they know that they're feeling inside themselves as a man that they're capable, that they're appreciated, that they're honored, then it's going to be easier for him to cherish her, which she desperately needs. But there's Tantra talks a lot about the word glamour. Glamour is a false belief that our personality, our lower nature, believes is a truth. So it's actually not real, but we believe it's real. So there's a glamour in the new age that men have to be a certain way. They have to be a warrior for a woman. They have to be constantly, there to go in the ocean, and they have to be constantly doing this and this and this and this and this. But they're still a human being, just like a woman.
Yeah.
So they're still going to go into their stuff. And if a woman can sit in the wisdom of her Shakti, her goddess self, she can actually sit and have an honest conversation with him in a place of the heart, which is her power. And he'll be receptive to that, and he'll be open to that, especially if she uses buffering techniques as well. Yeah.
Mm.
Because if he is, emotionally hurting her or he's not supporting her, there's something in him that he's missing. And if she can help him identify what that is, then the next step is working on it. Yeah. I was in a relationship once where my partner would lie to me, which is just devastating. And the Kali, the stormy part of me just wanted out. I'm done. You've lied, done. And he would get so upset and say, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll never do this again. I don't want to lose you. You're the best thing that I've ever, found in my life, da, 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 da. And in the wisdom of Shakti, I said, you will do this again. You will. Because it's a deeply ingrained pattern that I see from you. So we're going to sit and we're going to unpack this. Yeah. Where do you think it's come from? And the personality part of me, the storm part of me, wanted to literally rip his head off. I wanted to rip his head off. I wanted to emasculate him. I wanted to scream at him. But then as a woman, I am increasing that scar that he's already wounded by. And long story short, when he was a little boy and he had siblings, his mother would blame him for everything that went wrong with the siblings. So he learnt to lie because lying was safer than telling the truth. So if he lies to me and I scream and lose the plot and go into that storm, or Tantra calls Kali, the black goddess, the dark goddess, I'm just adding to that trauma. Yeah. So I had to learn to run along the beach, scream into a pillow. I had to learn to regulate the emotions and anger and sadness and frustration I felt towards him for doing it to me. But I know it wasn't a personal thing he was doing to me. So I said to him, you probably will lie again because it's a pattern, and Tantra teaches that with revelation, once we have a revelation, it doesn't mean we can change it overnight because it's deeply ingrained. Yeah. It's a self-preservation technique from the personality to not get blamed. So I said, when you lie, come to me. I promise you I will hold space. Yeah. And I will deal with my rage and anger, not at you. Yeah. And that's exactly what I did. But I also had boundaries. And the boundary was, if you're unfaithful, we're done. That's it. That's my bar. But everything else we can work through. Yeah. And so he did come to me and he did lie, I think, twice or three times after that. And then the pattern healed and never did it again. And, we were able to really, really open and communicate in a safe space that he said was actually fresh air for him.
Yeah. There's nothing quite like feeling so safe and supported and seen and held and loved, even through the shadows. It's all well and good to be there when it feels good, and it's all well and good to connect with someone, and it's all fucking rainbows and butterflies, and like, the sex is good and the physical attraction's there, and you just go and do nice things. But it's when you're down in the pits of it all to meet each other there and to say, like, I've got you, I'll meet you there. What can I do to support you? This is my boundary. This is only so much that I can take of the behavior. Other than that, what can I do to support you? And it's such a journey, I believe, to get there. And when you get there, it's like, oh wow, this is refreshing, like you said, that breath of fresh air. Like, it's almost like, I've been caged for so long and I'm out of that cage, and I can finally, or I've been pushed underwater for so long that I thought I was drowning and now I can breathe. To have that, in a relationship is really beautiful. And I think if anything, that is the reason to start the journey, or to get curious about, what Tantra can mean in your own life. And Cathy, I'd love to hear from you. I mean, obviously, we'll link to everything that you have available, through your work in your show notes, and obviously to, Sanctuary of Ananda, and also, the retreats and everything you do. Where should people start though? Do you have, any books or resources, or can you point people in the right direction that are like, yep, I'm on board. Let's go. Let's do this. Where do we even start with that?
Yeah. So I probably would recommend that. Of course, there's a lot of books out there, but it just depends on the teacher and the teacher's values and experience and knowledge of Tantra. But what I offer is private sessions, Zoom, phone, in person.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm more than happy. I always, chat with people on the phone first to see where's a good fit for them. What can they start with? Because some people go straight into learning module 1 and 2. And
Mm-hmm.
module 1 is separate online, and it's the foundation of Tantra, including incredible practices like breast massage and womb meditation and the famous jade egg, and for men, testicular breathing, and all these incredible practices to cultivate sexual energy, but also the journey of know thyself. And then module 2 is the tantric Anmo massage, which is mind-blowing, just mind-blowing. So some people go straight there. Some people just ring me and say, what should I do? And, I can also recommend books that
Mm-hmm.
I have personally chosen
Mm-hmm.
that I believe are as authentic as you're going to get. So
Beautiful. And
I'm
we
happy
might
to,
pop those in the show notes actually,
yeah,
so that people can have a look into those and either, jump on Audible to listen to it, or, grab a copy online. So
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
beautiful. And so, like I said, we'll link to your website and everything in the show notes. You've recently won an award. Tell us about that.
Yes, just last week, I was nominated and I won this award, the Australian Enterprise Award for the most prestigious Tantra school in 2024.
Congratulations.
So epic. So really, really happy to receive that award.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. I'd love to hear, before we wrap this up, a couple of more things. I'd love to hear a bit of a short snippet. What is your personal relationship like with your partner now that, you understand Tantra, he understands Tantra? Like, how is this relationship different to any other relationship that you've had before?
We are committed to spending time together.
Mm,
So we get so busy, whether we've got kids or not kids, but the two of us, we have made a pact that we are going to make that couple's time. And that
mm,
couple's time is to explore the tantras, to get a massage. Life's just too busy, and we get in our comfort zones. We also have really clear, open, loving communication. So there are things that annoy ourselves about it. Well, annoy each other. We
mhm,
annoy each other about ourselves. So we talk about them, and we talk about them in a place that is receptive. So out of the village in the mud. We've never had a village in the mud moment.
mm,
We're very compatible, and we've also worked really hard on understanding what each other needs from our wounds, from our past. So my
mm,
mum gave me away when I was 3, and I have a wound around validation. So he's
mm,
really, really good at validating me.
mhm.
So yeah, it's a game changer, and it's just smooth and harmonious, and we can create a lot of abundance. But we do need to put that time and space into our relationship, because
Yeah.
if we don't, um, we grow apart,
Mm,
not
mhm.
physically but emotionally.
Mm. Do you feel that Tantra can bring couples back together and reignite the spark that they once had 5, 10, 15, 20, 50 years ago?
Most couples, yes.
Mm,
There are some rules to that, obviously, that some couples know. Their dispositions are just total opposites.
mm,
And it's just, they're better off as friends. They're
mhm,
better off, like you said, unconscious coupling, and I have seen this with a few couples I've worked with. They're not meant to be together. It's too hard.
mm,
And, once they do an unconscious coupling and they realize this, they become great friends, better than when they were in a relationship. But
mm,
8 times out of 10, definitely Tantra will bring couples back together and at least identify whatever issues they're going through from a really powerful perspective. And that's what we call sacred love.
Wow, it's been such an eye-opening, incredible conversation to have with you today, and I'm so grateful for you joining me. Before we wrap up, Cathy, I have one last question for you. And to you, what is the meaning of life?
What is the meaning of life? The first thing that comes to my mind is, consciousness, but learning how to be a better person. Learning how to, be a better self and give back to the humanity, what I call it a lighthouse in a dark ocean. There's so many people suffering, and my meaning for life is to be a server of service. That's where I get the most joy. I'm kind of past all the material things.
Yeah.
I've got them all.
Yeah, I get that. I get that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
But being able to help and serve and show people joy, there is nothing else like it on the planet. And there's no material thing that can outweigh that for me.
Yeah, I love that so much. Cathy, thank you so much for being on the Enlightened podcast. You're an absolute rock star in this space, and it's been a pleasure to interview you.
Thank you so much for having me, Jen, and I've loved our time together, and I hope everybody's enjoyed it and got something from it.
Oh gosh, if they haven't got something from it, then I will just be like wildly disappointed in this. I've got so much from it. I've got yeah, there's definitely so many things to go away and reflect on definitely after this chat. So thank you so much.
Thank you for what you do, Jen. You're a lighthouse in a dark ocean.
Oh, I received that. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. I hope you love the Enlightened podcast, and the biggest compliment you can give me is subscribing to this podcast, sharing it, and leaving a rating and review. Feel free to follow me on Instagram. My handle is @JenHamiltonOfficial, and the podcast handle is enlightened_podcast. You can also find the video version on YouTube on my channel. Just search Enlightened and don't forget to hit subscribe. Have a beautiful day and enjoy living the enlightened journey of life.